Few artists have changed popular culture the way Kanye West did, and few have been so efficient at destroying their own image. For years, Kanye was synonymous with innovation, risk, and genius. Then, he became synonymous with scandal, conflict, and excess. This is not just the story of a musician, it's the story of what happens when talent, ego, pain, and fame grow faster than emotional stability.
That when someone comes up and says something like, I am a god, everybody says, who does he think he is? I just told you who I thought I was, a god.
Kanye West was born in 1977 in Atlanta, but he grew up in Chicago. He was the son of a university professor, Donda West. She wasn't just his mother, she was his support system, his compass, and the person who believed in him the most. Kanye grew up convinced that he was meant for something great, but the world didn't see him that way. In the industry, he was accepted only as a producer. He made beats, he produced hits, he helped build other people's careers. But when he said he wanted to rap, the answer was always the same. You don't look like a rapper, you're not what we're looking for. Kanye lived with one obsession, proving everyone wrong. In 2002, Kanye suffers a serious car accident. He breaks his jaw, doctors tell him he should rest. He does the opposite. He goes into the studio and records anyway. He records with his mouth literally wired shut. That's how Through the Wire is born. It's not just a song, it's a statement. You're not going to silence me, not even broken. And his first album is a success. Then comes another one and then another. Kanye doesn't just succeed. Kanye changes the sound of hip-hop. He introduces vulnerability, emotion, sensitivity. He becomes a complete creator. But with success, something else grows too. His ego. But before we continue with this story, I want to point out 3 moments that defined Kanye as an artist. First, before he was a star, Kanye had already changed the game from the shadows. He produced a large part of the Blueprint by Jay-Z, one of the most important hip-hop albums ever. While others were chasing fame, he was building the sound of legends. Kanye didn't want to enter through the side door. He wanted to enter by being indispensable. Second, he shows up with his college dropout aesthetic. Backpack, pink polos, zero tough guy rapper image. In an era dominated by gangsta rap, Kanye decides to go against everything. He talks about insecurities, doubts, and emotions. He doesn't just change his music. He changes what a rapper is allowed to be. Third, his obsession with controlling everything. Music, image, fashion, narrative. Kanye didn't want to be part of the system. He wanted to be the system. The most important figure in Kanye West's life was always his mother, Donda West. She didn't just raise him, she shaped him. She convinced him from a very young age that he was not ordinary. Donda used to repeat one thing to him again and again, that he should never accept the limits that others tried to put on him, that he had to believe in himself even when no one else did, that he was meant to be great. And Kanye took that literally. When the industry told him, "You're a producer, not a rapper," he answered, "I'm both, and I'm going to be the best." That level of self-belief doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a mother who pushed him to never make himself smaller. The problem is that kind of confidence without any breaks slowly turns into something else, into absolute certainty, into the inability to doubt, into the rejection of any external limits. When Donda dies, Kanye loses more than just his mother. He loses the only person who could tell him, "Slow down." She was the only person he truly listened to. From that moment on, his ego no longer has a counterweight, and that's when the real loss of control begins. In 2009, at the MTV Awards, Kanye walks onto the stage and takes the microphone from Taylor Swift. This isn't a mistake. It isn't an isolated impulse, it's a signal. From that moment on, Kanye stops being just an artist. He becomes a character, a source of conflict, a permanent headline. Every public appearance becomes a risk, every sentence a potential explosion. The genius starts to be overshadowed by the chaos. First, he decides to turn his political ambitions into a spectacle. He shows up with hats, slogans, contradictory statements, and surprise announcements of presidential runs. He isn't looking for a consensus. He's looking for impact. And along the way, he stops being just a musician with opinions and becomes a permanent generator of controversy. Second, he turns interviews into battlegrounds. What starts as a conversation ends in chaotic monologues, attacks on colleagues, on the industry, and on anyone who disagrees with him.
Break. When we come back, we're getting our Kanye's answer.
We're not going to Jimmy Kimmel the situation.
No, we're going to come right back.
No, we're not going to come right back.
Okay.
We're not going to Jimmy Kimmel the situation.
Fair enough.
We're going to give me time to think.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm going to use time to my advantage
Fair
in
point.
this situation. Now repeat the question.
Journalists are left speechless. Brands start to panic, and the focus shifts away from his music and onto his public outbursts. Kanye no longer controls the conversation. He sets it on fire. Third, in October 2022, Adidas ends its lucrative partnership with Kanye West, also known as Ye, after a series of offensive and anti-Semitic comments he made online and in public, comments the brand described as unacceptable, dangerous, and against its values of diversity and inclusion. The collaboration included his hugely successful Yeezy line, one of the most profitable fashion deals of the decade, worth billions of dollars in sales. But after those statements, Adidas announces the immediate stop of Yeezy production and payments, making it clear they would not tolerate anti-Semitism or any form of hate speech. Kanye and Kim did not start like just any couple. For years, they were friends. Kanye was fascinated by her long before they were ever together. He said it in interviews. He hinted at it in his songs. He repeated it in public without any shame at all. So when they finally became a couple, it wasn't just a romance, it was the fusion of two massive brands. The wedding wasn't just a wedding, it was a global event. Magazine covers, exclusive deals, photos planned down to the smallest detail. Kanye turned Kim into his aesthetic muse. He redesigned her public image. He decided how she dressed, how she posed, how she presented herself to the world. For some people, that was love. For others, it was control. For a while, they worked like a cultural empire. Fashion, music, reality TV, social media, total influence. But Kanye never learned how to live quietly. Every crisis became public. Every impulse became a headline. Every fight became a scandal. Little by little, Kim stopped being just his partner and became his crisis manager. She tried to protect him. She tried to hold the family together. She tried to stop him from sinking in front of the whole world. But eventually, it wasn't enough. The separation wasn't silent. It was chaotic. It was emotionally violent. And it was public. Kanye started posting private messages, attacking people online, playing the victim, exploding in public. Kim was left in the middle, between the man she loved and the man she could no longer control. The divorce wasn't just the end of a relationship, it was the collapse of the last great emotional anchor in Kanye's life. Kanye begins to speak publicly about his bipolar disorder, but he doesn't use it as a limit, he turns it into part of the character. In interviews, he says he doesn't want to take medication. That medication turns him off, that without that inner chaos, he stops being creative. For him, that mental disorder isn't something to fix, it's his fuel. And then the episodes start to become more frequent. Erratic speeches, impulsive decisions, grand announcements that never happen, projects that are born and die in a matter of weeks, unnecessary conflicts with colleagues, brands, and allies. Sometimes he apologizes, Sometimes he doubles down. Sometimes he seems clear-minded. Sometimes he seems completely out of control. The line between genius and self-destruction becomes almost invisible. People around him try to step in. Some leave, some get tired, some just stop calling. Kanye keeps creating, but with more noise around him and less support. The talent is still there, the vision is still there, but the control is gone, and little by little the world starts to change the way it looks at him. Not as an unpredictable artist anymore, but as someone who is hurting himself in public. What once looked like eccentricity starts to look like a warning, and Kanye, once again, doesn't slow down. The breakup with Kim isn't just emotional, it's symbolic, it's structural. It's the collapse of the last place where someone was still trying to set limits. From that moment on, everything speeds up. Kanye starts to lose more than just a partner. He loses allies, he loses partners, he loses entire teams who no longer know how to handle him. The words that for years were part of the show start to have real consequences. Interviews that used to create controversy now create real breakups. Messages on social media that once felt like provocation now start closing doors. Brands walk away, contracts fall apart, projects get frozen, doors that were always open start to close one by one. The conflict with Adidas marks a point of no return. It's not just losing a sponsor, it's losing the empire he built with Yeezy. Billions of dollars, years of work, a historic partnership, broken in public. For the first time, Kanye isn't just in an image crisis. He's in real trouble, with power, with business, with structure. And the hardest part is this: there's almost no one left close enough to stop him. The genius becomes more and more isolated, speaking louder, but being heard by fewer people, surrounded by noise, by controversy, by fires he keeps starting himself. Kanye is no longer just controversial. He starts to be seen as unpredictable, as uncontrollable, as a risk. And then something happens that had never fully happened before. His own legacy starts to become fragile, because now it's no longer just about what he says. People start asking whether it's still possible to separate the artist from the disaster. Kanye West changed music, he changed aesthetics, he changed pop culture. Few artists push the limits of what can be created so far, and few cross the limits of what can be destroyed so far. His story is not just the story of a genius, it's the story of a talent without emotional breaks, of a man who turned his pain into art but never learned how to live with it. For years, the world argued about whether you could separate the artist from the character. Today, the question is different. What happens when the character ends up devouring the artist? Because sometimes the greatest enemy of a genius is not criticism, is not the industry, is not the system. It's himself. And that may be the highest price of all, not losing fame, not losing money, not losing power, but losing control right when you had finally conquered everything. This was the story of Kanye West. This is Behind the Icon. If this story made you think, if you enjoy this kind of documentary storytelling, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories.